You already have power. You just haven't used it at full force. You control your thoughts, you control your breath, you control how you show up in every room. That's not a weakness. That's leverage. And in this video, we sharpen it. This is your guide to emotional control. Not theory, but daily practice. Not soft self-help, but precise philosophy rooted in the mindset of men who led with discipline, clarity, and unshakable presence. Here, you'll learn the Stoic warrior mindset. You'll learn how to stay calm when others panic, how to move without emotion, how to speak less and dominate more. This is where silence becomes strategy and detachment becomes power, because true strength doesn't make noise. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't chase approval. It commands. If you're ready to master yourself, to become the calmest, most controlled man in the room, then you're exactly where you need to be. Hit that like button to push this power forward. Subscribe for more videos that train your mind like a weapon. And share this with a man who refuses to be ruled by emotion. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more still warriors. Let's begin. 1. Control begins with awareness. A blade isn't dangerous until it's gripped with intent. A storm isn't power until it moves. And a man, no matter his experience, no matter how many years he's worked, sacrificed, survived, remains dormant until he recognizes one truth. Control begins with awareness. Not awareness in the sentimental sense, not the kind found in mindfulness apps or long-winded journaling routines. This awareness is raw, tactical, brutal. It is the cold realization that every reaction you've given, every outburst, every moment of hesitation, every decision driven by offense was chosen by you, even if you thought you were triggered. That word alone is a lie. You weren't triggered. You were unaware. You can't master what you won't admit you're giving away. Emotion isn't the enemy, blindness is. And most aren't just blind, they're proud of it. They speak with conviction, act from impulse, and defend what they never examined. But Stoic philosophy wasn't built for men who want to feel good. It was built for men who want to be precise. And precision starts here, with noticing. The tone in your voice when you speak. The weight of your breath before you answer. The pull in your chest when someone disrespects you. These are signals, not orders. Modern culture tells you to follow your feelings. That's how you get led in circles. The Stoic follows his logic, his code, and his awareness is the sentry that keeps him from breaking rank. Imagine a soldier on a battlefield who shoots at every sound. He isn't brave, he's reckless. Now, imagine another. He scans, waits, breathes, he moves only when he must. That's not slowness, that's strategy. And strategy starts with seeing what others miss, your internal landscape. In everyday life, this looks like restraint. Not passive silence, but active command of presence. In a heated negotiation, the unaware man rushes to fill the silence. The aware one lets it stretch. The unaware takes the bait in a debate. The aware one watches, waits, and responds when the timing serves his outcome. At home, the unaware argues to be right. The aware listens to detect patterns, not just words. He sees emotional noise like traffic, loud, chaotic, but irrelevant to where he's going. Awareness doesn't slow you down. It strips the fat from your actions. You move with less noise, less reactivity, and more accuracy. But it's earned, not gifted. You build it by watching yourself without judgment, by noticing where your control leaks, your posture, your tone, your response to resistance. Every flinch is data. Every silence is a mirror. The practice begins now. Say nothing for the next hour unless it's necessary. Watch your reactions like you're not inside them. Track your tone, your pace, your presence. That's not detachment, that's command. Because a man who doesn't flinch, doesn't react, doesn't explain, isn't empty. He's focused, and that's what makes him dangerous. 2. Detach from outcome, own the action. A hunter doesn't mourn the missed shot. He recalibrates, reloads, and watches for the next movement in the grass. His identity isn't tied to the arrow, it's tied to the act of aiming again. This is the principle of detachment, not retreat, not indifference, but focused control over where your energy begins and where it ends. Action belongs to you, the outcome does not. The world won't say that. The world teaches performance, applause, validation. You're told to tie your worth to how others respond, how things unfold, and how the scoreboard lights up. That's why so many collapses occur when the result doesn't reflect the effort. They weren't just invested in the work, they were addicted to the reward. And that's the trap. The Stoic sees it differently. His discipline ends at the line he can control. What lies beyond, opinions, reactions, results, doesn't concern him. That's not a weakness. That's clarity. Detachment is the skill that keeps you steady when the market crashes, when the meeting falls apart, when your plan doesn't go as planned. It's what separates the leader from the loud one. One resets and the other rants. One refocuses and the other complains. One owns what's his and the other chases what isn't. Detachment isn't coldness, it's strategy. Imagine a blacksmith forging steel. He doesn't panic when sparks fly. He doesn't celebrate when a shape forms. He just keeps hammering, shaping, adjusting. His job isn't to predict the final form. It's to show up at the forge every day and deliver his precision. That's how the Stoic approaches life. One swing at a time, no celebration, no despair, just a deliberate motion. In practice, this means you don't attach your value to how your message lands, only how clearly you delivered it. You don't obsess over how someone feels about your boundaries, only that you enforce them cleanly. You don't hinge your peace on whether someone apologizes, only that you maintained your character. You operate like a surgeon, clean, sharp, objective. You walk into each task not to be praised, but to be precise. You train the mind to say, I showed up, I gave the full effort. The outcome belongs to chaos, the action belongs to me. And that shift, once internalized, is what frees you. Because once you stop tying your identity to the fruit, you finally become free to master the root. Try this. For the next 24 hours, every action you take, write, speak, decide, lead, do it as if the result doesn't exist. Show up only for the act, not the applause. Then watch your clarity sharpen. Your energy will no longer bleed into fantasies or fears. You'll move faster, smoother, quieter. Not because you care less, but because you care only about what's yours to command. And that's the essence of control. 3. Ego is the enemy of precision. A mask can protect, or it can blind. It depends on who put it on. Most don't realize their mask wasn't crafted by discipline. It was built from ego, that hunger to be seen, to be praised, to be known as the good one, the strong one, the one who never fails. And when that image cracks, when reality doesn't match the identity, they fall apart. Not because they failed, but because their ego made failure feel fatal. The need to be seen is the need to be controlled. Because every ounce of you that depends on the eyes of others is a piece of you you've surrendered. You become loud when you're insecure. You chase respect instead of earning it through restraint. You overtalk, you overshare, you overreact, not out of confidence, but desperation to keep the illusion alive. The ego needs attention to survive. The Stoic needs nothing. The Stoic doesn't walk into a room to impress. He walks in to observe. He doesn't prove strength, he shows stillness. He doesn't wear a mask to look powerful. He becomes powerful by not needing one. And this is the shift most never make. They confuse external validation with internal mastery. But a man who owns himself doesn't need applause to act. He doesn't need an agreement to stand still. He doesn't need recognition to choose what's right. Look at a lion. It doesn't announce itself before it moves. It doesn't roar before it strikes. It watches, it calculates, it waits. That is not arrogance. That is confidence refined into focus. And that's what ego will always rob you, stillness. Because the ego is loud. It wants to be first, it wants to be praised, it wants to be loved. But love fades, praise fades, applause fades. What remains is your conduct when no one's watching. This plays out everywhere. In meetings where silence is more powerful than talk. In conflict where walking away is dominance, not defeat. In relationships where being still and clear carries more weight than long explanations. Ego wants you to react. Precision demands you pause. Ego wants to be the center. Discipline wants to center you. You're not here to prove you're good. You're here to be precise. You're not here to be impressive. You're here to be effective. So try this. The next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. The next time you want to speak first, wait. The next time someone disrespects you, look them in the eye and smile. Not because you're weak, but because you've already won. That's what control looks like. Not noise, not anger, not defense, just still power, cold, focused, and undeniable. Because the man who lets go of ego, lets go of noise. And once there's no noise inside, no one can shake what's left. That's when your mask becomes unnecessary, because you've become the steel underneath. 4. Stillness dominates the room. A voice that speaks little holds more weight than a voice that fills the air. Power isn't loud. Power doesn't perform. It enters quietly, settles deep, and changes the tone of the room without saying a word. That's the nature of presence, not built through charisma or noise, but through self-mastery so sharp it radiates without motion. The man who controls himself controls the temperature around him. In a world obsessed with attention, silence is misread as weakness. That's the trap. They expect you to prove, to defend, to react. They want your energy spent justifying what you already know. But the Stoic doesn't move like that. He doesn't need the final word. He doesn't chase validation. He lets others fill the space with emotion while he watches, calculates, and waits. Not because he's passive, but because he's in command. And command begins with stillness. Imagine a man walking into a negotiation. He doesn't interrupt, doesn't speak first, doesn't adjust his tone to please. He waits, watches posture, hears what others miss, and when he speaks, he cuts straight through the noise. That's not just confidence, that's weaponized restraint. And restraint like that doesn't come from reading books or repeating affirmations. It comes from drilling your reactions until they serve your mission, not your ego. The man who trains in stillness doesn't flinch under pressure. He doesn't chase a reaction, he controls it. In meetings, he lets others argue. In conflict, he keeps his breath steady. On the street, in the home, in crisis, his tone doesn't shake because his core doesn't shake. He doesn't react to tone of voice, or to tone of insult. He hears it all as data, not command. And that's where the shift happens. From reacting to leading, from presence to dominance. Most fold under attention, most fumble when they're challenged. But a man who has mastered his presence carries a quiet that unnerves people. They can't read him. They can't provoke him. They can't pull emotion from him. And that's what makes them respect him. Because while others flash power like a badge, he wears it like steel under the skin. Unseen, unshakable, always ready. Start with this. For the next conversation that challenges you, speak 20% less. Look longer. Breathe slower. Say only what moves the room. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them adjust to your pace, not the other way around. Because when they adjust to you, they're already following you. This is how presence becomes influence. This is how silence wins without a fight. Stillness isn't passive. Its posture is sharpened by discipline. And when presence is earned, not performed, it doesn't need to speak. It already commands. 5. Turn pain into precision. A fire left untamed burns everything, but fire directed, refined, focused, it forges steel. Pain works the same way. Untrained pain weakens a man. It makes him lash out, fold inward, or numb himself into silence. But trained pain, it sharpens him. It builds cold focus, and it becomes the energy behind calculated movement. Pain is inevitable. Strategy is optional, and most people confuse emotion for strategy. They feel hurt and they react. They feel insulted and they defend. They feel discomfort and they retreat. But the Stoic does none of that. He sees pain for what it is, fuel, not for rage, not for revenge, for refinement. There's a moment every man faces when things fall apart. Divorce, failure, betrayal, reputation ruined, money gone. And in that instant, he stands at a fork in the road, collapse or command. One direction leads to self-pity, blame, addiction to validation. The other, to silence, recalibration, and power. Not loud power, silent strength. Not through speaking more, but through building a deeper internal structure. The Stoic trains for this moment long before it comes. He rehearses loss, he imagines discomfort, he prepares his posture before the fall. That's not pessimism, that's premeditation. The practice of turning the worst-case scenario into something familiar, so when the ground breaks, he doesn't. Because a man who has already faced pain in his mind owns it when it arrives in real life. Think of a fighter stepping into the ring. He doesn't panic when he's hit. He's been there before, in training, in silence, alone in the dark with only discipline and repetition. He's taken the punch thousands of times without the crowd. That's why he doesn't flinch now. His body has absorbed the cost. His mind has made peace with the chaos. His pain is not weakness, it's the blueprint. It's pattern recognition. And that's what you need, not just to endure pain, but to use it as a signal to adjust, recalibrate, and strike cleaner next time. So when life hits, don't waste it on emotion. Write it down, strip it of story, see the facts. What did you miss? What will you never ignore again? What reflex inside you still needs to be killed? That's how pain becomes instruction, and instruction followed with cold consistency becomes strength. Try this. Recall the last painful event that rattled you. Strip it of names, faces, even feelings. Turn it into data. Now, write down the one adjustment that would have changed the outcome, in thought, in tone, in response. Just one. Then drill that until it becomes automatic. That's how you train pain into precision. Because you don't get stronger by escaping suffering. You become powerful when it stops shaking your frame. The fire still burns, but it burns in your direction now. Quiet, controlled, lethal. 6. Own the frame, control the noise. A message doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be framed right. And the man who owns the frame owns the conversation, the direction, the outcome. Not by shouting louder, not by debating harder, but by refusing to be dragged into someone else's chaos. This is what the Stoic understands, that most conflict isn't about truth, it's about narrative control. And when you can control the narrative, you don't need to win arguments, you win ground. Noise is everywhere. People talk just to be heard, they respond to be seen, they confuse visibility with influence. But influence doesn't need noise. Influence bends the room in silence, it sets the tone before a word is said. And that's what most never learn. They try to respond to everything, defend everything, react to everything. They think they're protecting their image. What they're actually doing is handing it over, letting others define them, bait them, frame them. The Stoic doesn't respond to provocation. He studies it. He listens longer than necessary, not out of fear but precision. He doesn't need to correct every misquote, every insult, every sideways look. Why? Because he's not chasing approval. He's protecting leverage. And leverage isn't built into arguments. It's built into how little you need to say to shift the room back into your control. Picture a courtroom. 2 lawyers argue and the jury watches. But one man, silent, still, composed, sits at the head. That's the judge. The room waits for his voice, not because he talks the most, but because he owns the frame. That's what you become when you stop reacting to noise. You become the man the room adjusts to. This shows up in life in subtle ways. When someone insults you and you keep your posture. When you're challenged in public and you say nothing, not out of weakness, but out of dominance. Because you know words mean little unless they shift something. And not everything deserves your energy. Some things deserve your silence, because silence, when timed right, feels like a statement. And sometimes silence is the sharpest form of dominance. Try this. In your next heated interaction, say half of what you normally would. Let others reveal themselves first. Let the noise expose who's emotional. And while they scramble to be heard, you study, you wait. You answer when it serves, not when it's expected. And when you speak, speak only to steer. One line. One calm direction, no explanation. That's what control looks like in action. Not being louder, being clearer. Not being right, being grounded. You don't need to control the crowd. You just need to control your space within it. The moment you stop chasing clarity from others and start creating it within yourself, the noise outside loses power. And from that moment forward, the narrative is yours. 7. The still warrior doesn't speak, he finishes. Victory isn't always loud. In fact, the most dominant kind doesn't make a sound. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't signal a warning. It simply happens, like a blade slipping between armor, quiet, clean, irreversible. The warrior who still stands after everything has burned is not the one who roared the loudest. He's the one who didn't move unless it mattered. The one who trained in silence. The one who saw the chaos, but chose not to flinch. Stillness is often misunderstood. People equate it with softness, with inaction. But real stillness, forged by fire, carved by discipline, is not passive. It's the final evolution of control, the final form of power. The man who doesn't blink when insulted, who doesn't rush to explain himself, who doesn't chase closure, he is not empty. He's precise. And that precision is terrifying to those who run on emotion. Modern life rewards noise. Talk more, post more, argue more, share more. And in all that noise, the man who says nothing becomes a mystery. The one no one can read. The one who moves without warning. This isn't about disappearing. This is about weaponizing your presence so deeply that even your absence is felt. A still warrior doesn't need attention. His influence travels in silence, through behavior, through clarity, through cold decisions. Think of a shadow at the edge of a battlefield. It doesn't need to shout. It waits, and when it moves, it ends things. No drama, no build-up, just execution. The still warrior has no emotional tells. He doesn't wear panic on his face, he doesn't show rage when tested, he doesn't beg to be understood, and that's exactly why no one sees him coming. The Stoic does not try to be feared. He just becomes impossible to shake. He trains his mind to detach from praise, from threats, from praise disguised as manipulation. He doesn't seek fairness. He calculates outcomes. He doesn't fight for reputation. He becomes untouchable through results. And when his presence is tested, he doesn't raise his voice. He raises the standard. No announcement, just impact. In application, this means fewer explanations and more movement. Less noise, more outcome. It means showing up to meetings already prepared to walk away. It means letting silence stretch when someone expects you to defend yourself. It means holding your energy so tightly that when you act, it's surgical, never emotional. Here's your drill. For the next 48 hours, move as if you were being watched by your future self. Every word, every step, every pause. Let stillness guide your timing. Don't explain unless it's strategic. Don't react unless it bends the outcome. Let every action feel inevitable, not emotional. The still warrior doesn't beg for respect. He doesn't demand it either. He creates it by being the one who never flinches, never performs, and never forgets. Silence isn't retreat. It's a loaded weapon. 8. Rule the mind, rule the world. A kingdom can crumble, a company can fall, a family can fracture, but a man who rules his mind stays unbroken. Power doesn't begin with strategy, wealth, or position. It begins with internal command, not over others, but over impulse. The man who wins isn't the one who dominates the battlefield. He's the one who never surrendered to the war inside. Thoughts are subtle. They don't shout, they whisper. Doubt doesn't show up like a storm. It creeps in like fog. Guilt doesn't attack, it leeches. Emotion doesn't need to be loud to overthrow you. One moment of hesitation, one flash of anger, one collapse into weakness, and the crown slips from your grip. This is why mastery of the mind isn't optional. It's survival, it's sovereignty, and it separates the untouchable from the unstable. The Stoic doesn't waste time battling others. He masters the only battlefield that matters, the space between stimulus and response. He builds his internal infrastructure like a fortress, not flashy but impenetrable. His emotions are visitors, not rulers. His desires are tools, not masters. His thoughts are observed, not obeyed. And that's what makes him dangerous, because nothing controls him. Not rage, not approval, not fear. He uses his emotions strategically, like weapons laid out on a table. Chosen, timed, precise. Picture a general at war, watching the terrain from above. He doesn't charge with the foot soldiers. He sees the full layout. He doesn't panic with the noise. He's aware of every position, every move, every weakness, including his own. That's how you must see your own mind, as ground to survey, not a storm to survive, but a territory to rule. The moment you confuse a passing thought with a truth, you've lost control. And the moment you let a feeling dictate an action, you've handed your power to something temporary. Modern distractions are designed to steal this crown. Notifications, headlines, offense, outrage, everything trains you to react. But a Stoic trains for stillness. He drills emotional control until it becomes instinct. His default is clarity. His foundation is still. He doesn't eliminate emotion. He channels it through breath, through space, through time. And most importantly, through ownership. Try this. Next time you feel anything intense, anger, excitement, fear, label it in one word. Just name it. Don't react. Just recognize. That's anger. That's fear. That's pride. In that moment of naming, you take one step back from the trigger. You create space. And in that space, you reassert command. Because the man who doesn't feel isn't strong. The man who feels deeply but doesn't flinch, he is. He walks through chaos untouched because the fire burns around him, not through him. He is his own ruler, and the world respects what it cannot shake. Rule the mind. Rule the outcome. Rule the world. Not with noise, but with the kind of discipline so complete it silences every doubt before it ever becomes a decision. This is the path of the still warrior. Not a man without emotion, but a man who commands it. Not someone who escapes pain, but someone who trains it into power. What you've learned today is not just a philosophy, it's a daily practice. A quiet rebellion against noise, reaction, and weakness. You've learned to separate signal from distraction, to hold silence like a weapon, and to treat every emotion not as truth, but as data. Stoicism isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the ability to hold your position when everything around you shakes, to act when others stall, to wait when others rush, and above all, to feel nothing, yet still see everything. Control your emotions, and you control your energy. Control your energy, and you control the outcome. From detachment to emotional discipline, from mastering your presence to sharpening your calm, each principle is yours to drill, refine, and wield. And it doesn't take perfection, it takes repetition. Every moment you pause before speaking, every breath you take before reacting, every silence you hold instead of defending, that's practice. That's how control is forged. So begin now. Quiet the noise. Cut the waste. Move with focus. Speak only when it moves the room. Feel deeply, but flinch never. That's how you become untouchable. And if this message hits something in you, share your story below. Share how you train your control. Let others learn from your stillness, because one man's discipline can become another man's wake-up call. Remember, power doesn't always speak. Sometimes it listens. Sometimes it waits, but it never begs. It never breaks. It builds in silence with purpose. Feel nothing. Control everything. Live like it every single day.